second type of unused merchandise drawback is what they call substitution drawback. This is a little more complicated than direct identification merchandise drawback because it allows you to say if you import 100 widgets, you can export a different 100 widgets and claim drawback on those. So again, it's like it sounds. If you bring in one type of product, you can export the same type of product, although it doesn't have to be the same merchandise that you imported. So the issue in this case becomes, what merchandise can I substitute for my imported merchandise? Under the old standard, there was a concept known as commercially interchangeable. So if I imported goods, I could substitute goods that were commercially interchangeable with those goods, export them, and claim drawback. Commercial interchangeability was a bit of an unwieldy standard. There were 4 factors the government would consider when deciding whether or not 2 different products were commercially interchangeable. They'd review government industry standards, part numbers, tariff classifications, and the relative value of the goods. So there was an element of subjectivity to it. Under the new drawback law, that again just went into effect last year, substitution drawback is dictated by an 8-digit tariff classification. So if you import goods that are classified under one 8-digit number, you can substitute those goods with anything classified within an 8-digit number, which is much easier. Classification, although there is some gray area in some classifications, it's much more objective than the commercial interchangeability standard. This being customs law, however, there is a caveat to this new 8-digit substitution standard, and it has to do with tariff provisions that are what we call other provisions. I'm assuming a lot of you guys in this webinar are familiar with the HTS classification system, but there are many codes in the harmonized tariff schedule that just cover other goods. So if the larger heading covers widgets, there's all different types of widgets that fall underneath it, and then there's a catch-all provision, which is another provision. So if the 8-digit HTS number is an other provision, you have to go down to the 10-digit. And the 10-digit numbers, the 10-digit number of the imported good must match the 10-digit number of the outgoing good. However, another caveat, if the 10-digit HTS is also an other provision, there's no substitution drawback allowed. So that is the caveat. Although generally speaking, the 8-digit standard is easier to implement than the commercial interchangeability standard, there is that caveat with certain provisions, which is something you can consider. That's substitution unused merchandise drawback.
Go back to that for a second and kind of break that into 2 parts, right? You have the, which it's a big win, right? That 8-digit level HTS match. So to give some folks on the call maybe a scenario, I have a customer right now that imports the exact same item from 4 different countries, and the 5th country is actually a domestic supplier. And all of those get commingled together, as in they all get thrown in the same bin.
Mm-hmm.
So when that product goes to export, can they still use that 8-digit and claim that drawback?
Yes, they can, as long as it's not an other provision. So if
right.
you go down to the 8-digit number, is it an other provision? If so, you have to go down to the 10-digit number. If the 10-digit number is not another provision and it matches, the drawback claim is valid. But if the 10-digit number is also another provision, you're precluded from using substitution drawback.
So in that case, we've actually taken, with the new TIFTIA language, we've actually taken away some ability for substitution. You have in those scenarios. Right, and so we always caution our importers and I hate to use the word, but I'll say them, is to kind of stay away from that other provision, right? Because to the extent you can. It's this big swath of lots of potential issues. And when we see folks get in trouble simply from a classification perspective, it tends to be in those other type provisions. And so this is just another reason, as any of our importers are going through the process and trying to classify something, to say, I ended up at other. Maybe I should take a second look. Maybe I should ask the advice of somebody, look at it again. I understand that, hey, if it's duty free, it looks great. Believe me, that makes a lot of business sense. But at the end of the day, as you kind of look at your supply chain as a whole and your import compliance program as a whole, there's obviously some things out there that would maybe make you rethink that, or kind of look to say maybe there's something a little bit better.
Right. And look,